Chapter 35. The Emotional Bullet. Here's a useful way to look at our interactions with other people. It's called owning the round. The term comes from the firearms world. In other words, if you fire a bullet, that round is your responsibility. Does the round hit the target? Does it hit the target, pass through, and strike something behind it? Do you know where it's going to go? Do you know what's in the background? Do you know who's in the background? How far is that round going to travel? Where is it going to land? Does it have a purpose, and will it be successful? Whatever the answer to these questions, the bottom line is your round, your responsibility. Years ago, Kris was standing out on his lawn when his neighbor said, "Hey, look at that," pointing to a hole in the side of his house. Kris looked over and replied, "Joe, I think that's a bullet hole." "Yeah," Joe said, "it is a bullet hole." "Damn!" The police showed up a few hours later. It wasn't an important call like an active shooter would have been. If they had a spare moment, they could come by, which they eventually did. The officer took a look at the bullet hole and he said, "That's from somebody shooting into the air." His conclusion made sense because it was the first day of the new year. Some people decide to fire guns in the air to celebrate, yet fail to consider that when a round goes up into the sky and it eventually comes down somewhere. You know, gravity, Newton's law of universal gravitation. In that instance, it came down into the side of Joe's house. Because of the angle in which it landed, the police officer concluded that it wasn't anything to worry about. No one was sniping at Joe's home. They were just stupidly shooting into the air in celebration. The damage had already been done. The same thing applies when you are firing an emotional bullet. You need to own it. It's your round. So you own any damage or potential damage it causes. Now, there are many ways to look at this, but we want to share one example of how that emotional bullet can work. Some folks fire their emotional bullet quickly. They learned early in life that if they fire first, fire fast, then they deliver the emotional damage instead of receiving it. They throw the other person back on their heels psychologically. It's a knife fighter's, "if you're going to cut me, I'm going to cut you deeper, harder, and faster," sort of analogy. But to fire the emotional bullet first, to skip the protocols of escalation, that's serious. It eschews social norms and undermines relationships in most aspects of civilization, at least in so-called polite society. Nevertheless, some folks are happy to have that emotional bullet hit its mark and do its damage because they believe that it protects them. Think about phrases like, "I almost aborted you, but then I got drunk one night and decided, what the hell?" Or, "Go ahead and kill yourself. You're nothing more than an attention whore anyway." Or, "Kid, your mom should have swallowed." Or, "No wonder nobody likes you." Or, "You're the biggest disappointment in my life." Or, "I want a divorce." Even if they're said in anger, not something you truly mean, words like these destroy relationships, block communication, and undermine trust. The younger you are, the worse it gets. Scientific studies demonstrate that connections between the left and right sides of the brain are underdeveloped in adults who were verbally abused as children. One way to look at the emotional bullet is to assume that it is designed to do just what a real bullet does: kill, maim, damage, or stop. It's powerful stuff. John Wesley Hardin, 1853 to 1895, was a criminal. Born in Bonham County, Texas, Hardin is considered one of the evilest, most erratic, sociopathic individuals of that time period. Compared against all the famous gunfighters and outlaws of the Wild West, that's saying something. He murdered at least 21 men in ambushes and duels. In fact, John Wesley Hardin was reportedly so mean that he shot a man just for snoring. Well, the way that picture is constructed in our mind is that he's in the same room as another guy. The guy is snoring, so Hardin pulls out his gun and shoots him dead. The fact of the matter is, however, that he was in a public rooming house and a guy in the room next door on the other side of the wall was snoring loudly. So, Hardin pulled out his gun and fired a round into the wall, his way of telling the other guy to knock it off. It may have been a so-called warning shot, or it may have been intentional, but the fact of the matter is that the round hit the other man and killed him through the wall. Hardin quickly, as we like to say in the Old West, skedaddled, so that he didn't get caught for that murder. Nevertheless, Hardin saw his gun, his bullets, as a tool. As the old saying goes, it was his hammer, so everything in the world became a nail. Erratic, irresponsible, 100%. He didn't fire that round thinking about the responsibility that he had in regard to what happened with that piece of lead after it left his barrel traveling at 828 feet per second or thereabouts. Was he really trying to kill somebody? Was that his intent? Well, likely it was not his intent, yet we're certain he didn't care one way or the other. It didn't make any difference in his world. The bullet found its mark, and a man died. That's a good analogy for why we should be careful with our words. We need to be careful with our emotional bullets. Scientific studies have proven that negative words release stress and anxiety-inducing hormones in subjects hearing them. They can damage or undermine relationships as well as lead to long-term anxiety, anger, depression, and self-doubt. That whole bullet analogy is apropos. There's a classic statement attributed to Chojun Miyagi, the founder of Goju Ryu Karate. If your anger goes first, hold your hand, and if your hand is going first, hold your anger. His point, it's about balance. It's about understanding the power of what you're about to engage in. Whether it's an emotional bullet from an argument between a couple, a full-on lead round fired through a wall during the Wild West period of America, or the admonition of a karate master, we should be very careful about what we say and do. So, your round, your responsibility. Is shooting truly necessary, or is the emotional bullet a reflexive tool we use without thinking? If somebody is firing an emotional bullet at us, we now have the ability to recognize it and to see it for what it is. Sometimes a desperate act of protection, sometimes a reckless deed, sometimes an emotional reaction that has escalated beyond what is warranted for the situation. We have that ability to train for this, just like we do with any other aspect of our martial art. It's really just mindfulness. If anger leads, we can hold back our fists. Yet if we strike first, we can do it without anger, whichever the situation warrants. The bottom line is, whether it's real lead or real emotions, we're responsible for our actions. We're responsible for how we respond to those acts that other people levy against us too. The emotional bullet is an assault, an attack, something that is designed to hurt, maim, or emotionally damage another person, in many ways much like a lead bullet. Use it wisely. Takeaways. If you fire a bullet, that round is your responsibility, regardless of where it lands. Emotional bullets are much like lead ones. They can cause real and lasting damage. Like any other aspect of martial arts training, we can practice keeping our anger in check, holding back our fists. Yet when striking is warranted, we can learn to do it without emotion. Quotes, "Whatever is begun in anger ends in shame." Benjamin Franklin. Anybody can become angry, that's easy, but to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. Aristotle. There's a natural law of karma that vindictive people who go out of their way to hurt others will end up broke and alone. Sylvester Stallone.